My name is Tori Brennan. I'm 29 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I lived in the shadow of a family that never really saw me. The invisible daughter who learned to stay quiet, while my father, Richard Brennan, praised my older brother, Garrett, as the golden child, and spoke of legacy, success, and power as if those things were only meant for him, while I spent my childhood sketching gardens, sitting in my small bedroom with a Frank Lloyd Wright poster on the wall, listening to laughter from downstairs, and telling myself that being unnoticed was safer than being rejected. And even when I grew up and moved into a tiny 480 square foot studio apartment in Portland, I carried that quiet invisibility with me, working late nights designing rain gardens and planting sketches that no one in my family cared to understand. Until the Thanksgiving that shattered everything, when my father humiliated me in front of 30 relatives, grounding me like a child, seating me at a folding table with the kids, while he gave a speech about family values and legacy that somehow never included me. And that night, with my hands shaking but my heart strangely calm, I packed a small bag, walked down the dark hallway in socks, moonlight spilling through the windows, and left the colonial house I had grown up in, believing I was walking away from everything forever, unaware that my grandmother Eleanor had quietly been rewriting the family's future for years. And weeks later, when I sat in my car with the sun visor mirror open, staring at my pale, tired reflection while clutching a manila folder of legal documents, I felt like I was looking at a stranger who was about to become someone else, because the lawyer, Harold Caldwell, had called and asked me to come in. And inside his office, I saw the proof that changed my life forever. Trust documents with my grandmother's handwriting, a red notary seal, bank confirmations, property deeds, and emails exposing Garrett's manipulation. And the realization hit me like a wave that the house, the assets, the legacy my father claimed as his had never legally been his at all. That my grandmother had named me the sole beneficiary because she believed I was the only one who would protect what she built without greed. And as I drove back through Hawthorne Street with wet pavement reflecting pale November sunlight and bare oak trees lining the road, memories flooded my mind of riding bikes with her, walking to school, kneeling in the garden while she taught me the names of flowers, and told me quietly that some people bloom in silence. And when I parked behind the house and walked toward the front door with Caldwell behind me, fear and anger twisted in my chest, but there was also a strange calm, like I was finally stepping onto a stage I had avoided my entire life. And inside the living room, my father stood like a judge, glasses on his nose, announcing a fake inheritance plan, while relatives nodded obediently and Garrett played humble. And then the room froze when I entered, placing the folder on the table and watching every head turn, Caldwell lifting the original trust document and announcing that I was the legal owner of the house and the assets. Gasps rippling through the room as emails exposing Garrett's schemes were revealed, Meredith slowly pulling away from him, my great-aunt speaking about my grandmother's foresight, and my father's authority collapsing in real time as he slammed a chair and shattered a glass of port wine, red liquid spreading across the hardwood floor like the blood of a legacy he had stolen. And when he tried to manipulate me with tears and speeches about family unity, I stood firm, my voice calm but unbreakable. And for the first time in my life, my mother stood up to him, trembling but strong, saying she was tired of being silent. And as my father retreated into his study and closed the door, decades of power shifted in seconds. And in the aftermath, relatives apologized, others left quietly, legal filings removed him as trustee, banks confirmed transfers, Garrett's career collapsed under the weight of his own actions, and I stood alone in the house, unlocking the door with a key that finally felt like it belonged to me, walking through rooms filled with memories, smelling lavender, touching walls my grandmother once touched, kneeling in the overgrown garden and promising her I would make it bloom again. And later, at the Cannon Beach cottage, I opened a wooden box filled with photos and a handwritten letter where she told me she always saw me, that quiet strength mattered more than loud success. And I cried on the porch, watching waves crash against Haystack Rock, realizing that family drama was small compared to a life reclaimed. And back home, I wrote emails, reclaiming my identity, planted tulips with my mother in silent reconciliation, converted my father's study into a landscape design studio where sunlight poured through tall windows and ideas finally felt free, watched peonies bloom in spring as the house transformed from a monument to power into a place of healing, received my mother's apology letter on the porch, held both her letter and my grandmother's in my hands, and finally closed the front door of my house with peace in my heart, kneeling in the garden at sunrise, planting new peonies as golden light spilled across the yard, knowing that the invisible daughter had become the architect of her own future, that silence had turned into strength, that neglect had turned into independence, and that the legacy my father tried to control had ultimately become the foundation for my own voice, my own home, and my own story that would never again be invisible.